Today we're going to talk about a woman who became a prisoner in her own home. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you love all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange things happening in the world, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss video upload. Let's get started. Blanche Monnier was a typical 25-year-old living in Paris in 1876. Blanche was a well-known socialite who was looking for love before it was too late. Eventually, she'd fall in love with an older man who was a lawyer, but he didn't come from money, nor did he have any money. In fact, he was quite broke, but this didn't bother Blanche at all. She just genuinely loved him and couldn't wait to marry him. But her aristocratic mother, Madame Louise, did not feel the same way. In fact, she forbid Blanche from seeing him, but Blanche refused, and her mother kept demanding that Blanche end their relationship with this man. She did not feel that the couple was going to be good for each other, and obviously she did not like that he was broke. How was he supposed to take care of Blanche if he didn't have any money? Feeling pretty hopeless, Madame Louise would do something that nobody would see coming. Because she knew her daughter Blanche would never leave this man, she took matters into her own hands. Madame Louise would lock Blanche in her room for the next 25 years. She literally kept her own daughter a prisoner in a tiny room. And in this tiny room, it was really dirty and smelly, and there was no natural sunlight, and the only food that Blanche would get every single day was her mother's scraps. Blanche would wither away up in this tiny room for 25 years, and eventually in 1885, her lover did die, so theoretically, her mother could have just let her out at any point now because she had supposedly locked her in this tiny room to prevent her from marrying this poor lawyer. So now that the lawyer is dead, she could theoretically just open the door and say, okay, you're free, go find somebody else. But she didn't. And basically Blanche just vanished from public life and nobody knew what happened to her. And her mother and brother just basically went on with their daily lives as if she didn't even exist anymore. And then in May of 1901, an anonymous letter reached the desk of the Paris Attorney General. And when he opened this letter and he began to read it, he was quite shocked. The letter basically claimed that a woman was being held prisoner in her own home over the last 25 years under some seriously terrible conditions. The letter would state, Monsieur Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. Half-starved, living on a putrid litter for the past 25 years, in a word, in her own filth. But the thing was, Madame Louise was an upstanding citizen. She lived in an affluent neighborhood with her son Marcel. Her late husband had even been a local arts faculty, and her son was even a law school graduate. So of course the Attorney General is reading this letter and thinking, this can't be true. And of course they're really skeptical of this letter and they're thinking maybe it's not truthful and somebody's just writing kind of slanderous things. But then they recall that 25 years ago, Blanche had just disappeared. She just vanished into thin air and nobody knew why. So of course police are kind of in a hard spot here. They know that Madame Louise is an upstanding citizen, but they also know that they should investigate this because what if she was in this house all along? So they arrive to Madame Louise's house and they knock on the door, except nobody answers. So they knock a few more times before forcing their way into the home. And when they open the door to this house, they were instantly hit with a terrible smell. And they followed that smell all the way upstairs. That's how terrible it was. And they would follow this stench all the way up until they found themselves at the attic. So when they entered the room, they found casement windows. And what a casement window is basically like doors, but they're windows that open. And this casement window was covered with heavy curtains. And it was just coated in dust. Everything was full of dust. Remember, this is an attic. It's dirty. It's dusty. It's really hard to even kind of breathe in there because of the stench. But police couldn't actually open these windows until they removed it from the hinges. So police start removing these windows from the hinges. And when they do, finally sunlight streams into the really, really dark room. And what they find in that room when the daylight hit was horrifying. In a back corner covered by a filthy blanket, they found Blanche and she was just skin and bones, but she was still alive. She was completely nude and she was lying on this disgusting straw mattress. And it had been soaked through because of the urine and feces, as was the whole room. The whole room was just covered in urine and feces because she didn't have anywhere else to go to the bathroom to relieve herself. She wasn't allowed out of that room and she didn't have a bathroom there. And she only weighed 55 pounds. pounds. Madame Louise was immediately arrested, and she would go on and confess to obviously locking her daughter in this attic and keeping her a prisoner. Obviously, when they arrest Madame Louise, they take Blanche to the hospital. She hasn't been to a doctor obviously in over 25 years. She's very malnourished. She hasn't even seen the sunlight, because remember, those windows had been covered. She wasn't allowed to have the sunlight, and she was locked in that attic. Police had to literally bust the door down to get in there, and she didn't really make a sound. They didn't even know she was in there until they pried open those windows and let the sunlight in, and then they found her. And although she had been locked in that attic alone for 25 years, the hospital staff would say that she was very lucid, and she even told them that it was so lovely to be breathing fresh air. And then she would tell authorities what happened. She would say that she had found her suitor, and he was this older man who was poor, but she loved him and she wanted to marry him. And her mother, Madame Louise, was just not having it. Her mother was obviously an aristocrat and socialite, and she wanted her daughter, who was beautiful and kind and quiet, to marry somebody who could take care of her. And she was just covered with lice, and there was rats in the room and food scraps everywhere. She just lived a miserable life stuck in that attic for 24 hours a day, every single day of her life for 25 years. I can't even imagine what that would be like to not feel the sunlight for all of that time. And nobody actually knows who wrote that letter, because servants had never even reported. I mean, there was plenty of servants in the home. They could have just went to the police at any time, but they didn't. And obviously Blanche's mother, Madame Louise, and her brother Marcel, they never reported it because they didn't want to go to prison, which they both ended up in jail. But they do believe that a servant had actually told her boyfriend what was happening, and that man was so horrified he wrote a letter to the police so that Blanche could get some help. And Madame Louise would die because an angry mob supposedly formed outside of her house, and they were just so enraged by what she did. She actually had a heart attack. Blanche would actually suffer some serious psychological issues because of her imprisonment, which isn't obviously surprising. I mean, she was kept in this dirty, filthy room with very little food and no sunlight, and I mean, she was covered in her own filth. Of course she's going to be psychologically damaged. She would actually live out the rest of her days in a French sanitarium, but would later die in 1913. But that's it for today, guys. If you like this video or any other video on my channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Check out some other videos on my channel while you wait for another upload, and if you have a suggestion for a case, pop it in the comments and I'll get to as many of them as possible. See you next time.